Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the City Connect podcast with me, your host, Prince Carl. I want to say that I'm officially in the mood to do the podcast. There's a little bit of a break there in between. I've been down here at the farm where I live, enjoying some time off. I've been off for about 4 days and just kind of chilling, enjoying the beautiful weather and breeze. I had a little bout of some sort of a flu, which my immune system took care of pretty quickly, but I kind of tried to work, and then it kind of dragged out longer than it should have. But I'm doing all right. So I want to say that if you are a new listener to the City Connect podcast, I welcome you. I'm glad that you're here. There's no guest on today. It's just going to be me and you. And I'm going to follow up and continue on the what I was talking about last time. And I wanted to make a couple points, things. These are two things that I forgot to add in the last podcast, episode number 4. I want to clarify when I spoke about how I had to leave my apartment in Riverside and because my neighbors were stealing my stuff. I want to emphasize that it wasn't like there was just one woman or one individual that was stealing my stuff where I could have gone up to them and said, "Hey, stop stealing my shit." Like, it wasn't. I wish it was that simple, but it wasn't. The ringleader of it was this woman that was living there with her mom, and she was in and out of prison. She was basically a Facebook prostitute, and she would invite guys to the apartment complex area at night and turn her tricks there in the parking lot. And the reason she had to do that is because the ankle bracelet would not allow her to go out into the community and turn tricks. So it makes logical sense. But then she also was running what I called a drugstore. And so, in the middle of the night, there would be people who were on meth who were banging on her window looking for drugs. I mean, it was absolutely insane. And so anything that was on this property, any vehicle, any tool, any shiny object was going to get stolen. And it wasn't by her, and it wasn't by her mom. It was by this community. It was like the Blob. It was like there's no one angle or person you can point a finger at and deal with it. It's an interconnected community of shitty people, that some of which were on drugs, and unfortunately when people are on drugs, the drugs take over, and they lose all sense of civility and rationality. And so it was a scary situation, because those people were out of control, and I was totally outnumbered. I mean, I could not even give you a solid number on how many of these individuals were coming and going. It was just ridiculous. It was like working at a halfway house or like a prison or something. Like, they were just in and out. God knows what went on when I wasn't there. God knows what went on when I was asleep. So, bottom line is, I just want to emphasize I had very little control over it. I couldn't really stop this, and the only thing I could do was ultimately remove myself from the situation, which is what I did, and I came here to the farm, this lovely place. Quick shout out. My friend told me I have a good voice for ASMR. I'm not doing an ASMR video per se, but yeah, I would definitely welcome anyone who would be here. The other thing I wanted to point out is the fact that, unfortunately, in California, we have this phenomenon with the businesses here, and I would call this like the California dive bar business phenomenon, where the definition of a dive bar would be a place that is not very well managed, it's not very well maintained, they may not treat the customers very well, the prices may not be very good, the product may not be very good, but because the dive bar is in a central location, and because it's been in that location for so long, it has a very large, you know, group of customers and customer base, substantially enough to stay in business, and basically it can continue to be a poorly run organization, barely legal to run the organization the way it's run, and still make money. So I I realized that there's a lot of dive bars in California. It's more than just dive bars. It's tire shops. It's restaurants. It's hotels. It's, you know, realtors, mechanics, on and on. And basically, these people have been around for so long and have so much of a customer base, that despite how bad they are, and despite how bad the service they give is, and despite how poor their reviews are, and despite how little they actually care what people say or care about their product, they remain in business. And not only do they remain in business, but they've got people lined up to do business with them. You know, and in any normal market, you scratch your head and go, wait, hold on a second. Like, these people are doing a really bad job. They're providing a really bad service product, and they're going to eventually go out of business because somebody's going to come on along and do a better job and put them out of business. But that doesn't happen in California. You know, there's so many people here. That California is home to 40 million people, and it's almost seems like there's a shortage of like businesses. It's weird. You'd think that there would be a lot, but there's not that many, and so the ones that are there, just because of the fact that they're there, they flourish. Good, bad, and ugly. So watch yourself if you come to California to have any services done. I unfortunately realized that having my own business in California, I saw a lot of poorly run organizations, and it's amazing. They've got customers lined up. It's crazy. They just keep going. Still going to this day. So, to get into more of a positive note on this podcast, once again, I appreciate the fact that you're here. The weather's beautiful. I've substantially gotten over whatever it was with this flu thing that I had. I can also say that I think people are overreacting a little bit about the whole coronavirus thing. It's no more deadly than any other strain of the flu. It's a strain of the flu that has a name. And, you know, it's like we went to Costco yesterday, and for the first time, the number one selling product at Costco was out of stock. And I know what the number one selling product at Costco is, because when I was a truck driver for Swift, I used to drive paper products, aka toilet paper and paper towels, to Costco. And they would every Costco I would go to, you know, in the Bay Area and San Jose, would tell me the number one product we have at Costco is toilet paper. Like, that's just, and apparently one of the receiving managers told me that there was some edict that came down from the CEO of Costco and said, because this is our number one selling product, no Costco will ever run out of toilet paper. You've got to have more in stock than you need, and it's never going to happen. And so yesterday we go to Costco, and sure enough, like, the lady that was welcoming everyone to Costco, the first thing she says, we have no hand sanitizer and no toilet paper. And I was like, wow. And I didn't really understand the logic. Okay, I get the whole, like, fear and pandemonium and chaos and, oh my God, the world's ending. Let's go out and buy as much crap as we can because, you know, we don't know when we're ever going to be able to buy it again. I get that whole thing. Like, every once in a while we do that as a society. I get that. I don't participate in it, but I understand it. But hypothetically, if you did have this flu, which I've had the flu previously in my life, I've survived, and hopefully I'll survive this round as well. What strategic advantage would toilet paper provide to prevent / help you cure yourself from the flu? I don't get that. I don't see where toilet paper lines up with the whole fear of virus thing. But anyway, To switch gears, what I wanted to talk to you guys about was, you know, you talk in business, as an entrepreneur, there's things, they're big picture items, and there's things like a vision for the business, which is more than just, weekly or yearly goals. This is sort of an idea of where the business is going. And then there's also the kind of why. Why is everyone doing this? What's the purpose? There's companies you could look at like Apple, and why would have been to make the world a better place or something like that. Or SpaceX, the why would be to colonize life on Mars. Or um, you know I guess for me, like the why, and I've thought about this, would be just to get myself back to the feeling of prosperity and security that I experienced during the 1990s. So that's why I'm going to title this podcast to be Getting Back to the 90s. And the 90s were a great time. And they were a time from, we arrived in California in 1989. And that was the beginning of the 90s. And then I've lived in California ever since 1989. But I lived here with my mom, dad, and my sister, until 1997 when I went to San Diego State. So it was a good time. It was a period of, I guess it was prosperity for us because we had come from a city called Rockville, Maryland, on the East Coast, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. And we had driven across the United States, and we had this kind of California here we come mentality, and we had high expectations and high hopes, and they were met up with. We got here, and there was a brand new house that was being built in Gold River, California. It was about 3,300 square feet, which was a very large house for four people. Definitely larger than any house I've ever lived in. 2 levels, had this grand, pool in the backyard that was all custom designed. 4-car garage, and it was the house that afforded other types of luxuries, that we enjoyed in the 90s. It was a lifestyle that we came into and started. And I think my memory of those times, looking back to those times, is probably better, and I look at it with more of a rosier picture in hindsight than it was actually living it. Actually living it was good times, but it wasn't incredible. But I think some of my family members, like my sister in particular, kind of make fun of me and tell me to move on and stuff like that. But in some senses, it was the nostalgia of the 90s, and of that time period in my life that helped me calm the anxiety and uncertainty of the future. There have been times, in my life, even most recently, 2017 was pretty rough, 2016, when I just wasn't doing too well. I never had any health problems or anything like that, but, um, you know, my business, as I talked about in the last podcast, brought on a lot of stress, or, um, I think a lot of the root of my problems in the past have been just not having enough fucking money. I mean, that's really as simple as it is. Like, if I had focused on making a significant amount of money when I was 20 years old, I probably would be in a much better position than I am. But again, that's not how life works. I'm not going to digress and say what could have been or get into that whole hypothetical jargon. But I'm lucky enough that I'm still, um, relatively young, healthy, feeling dapper and good looking. Shout out to anyone who's watching this YouTube video. I'm wearing the suspenders today, keeping the pants up. This is not my greatest outfit, but it's definitely comfortable. So, yeah, the 90s were great. We lived in this house in Gold River. If you want to Google it, 11782 Malona Circle, Gold River, California. And it was built. It was built for us. I mean, we went out there when it was just a concrete slab, and the house was built. And I had this massive, bedroom. My sister had her own bedroom. We had our own bathroom back there. Sliding glass door window that went out to the pool and the yard and everything. And yeah, the high school that I went to was a place called Rio Americano High School in Sacramento, California. Suffice to say, this was the high school that was closely located to one of the suburbs of Sacramento. They would call it like the Arden area. And it was a high school where most of the California state politicians' children went to school. It was in a fairly well-off area. Something like 88% white. I mean, zero diversity, zero diversity at all, which is really unheard of for any school of any type in California. I mean, California is a very diverse place, but there was like no diversity here. And this was a high school that people were beating down the doors to get into. They had like a waiting list of something like 900 kids that were trying to get a slot to go to this high school. And where we lived, we were already set up to go there. So we felt kind of special that this high school that everybody wanted to go to, we were going to get to go to. And I'm going to start a beverage here. A little Kirkland Signature sparkling water. That's refreshing. And so one of the reasons that these kids were trying to get into school is it wasn't necessarily because of the sports program, but the academics were such that they had a lot of AP programs. And I remember everyone I was going to school with was in this just feverish competition of trying to outdo each other with how many extracurricular activities they could put on their college resume. So, mock trial and debates, and, I'm on the lacrosse team and the soccer team and the football team. And, it was like the more stuff they could put on there. And a lot of it was just total BS. These were like these clubs that people would meet up with like once a month and talk about nothing. And it turned into like the whatever, the socialist club or whatever the hell. But these people were in this competition, and they knew that the more things they had on their college resume and the higher their GPA, the better chance they had at getting into an Ivy League school. And for a lot of these people, it wasn't, and I say these people, I was going to high school with them, but I wasn't necessarily involved in this whole competition that they were having. So I've always been kind of a loner. And I think that's one of my best qualities. At the time, I thought it was a bad thing, but I guess in retrospect, it's been a good thing because, there's a lot of things you can do as a loner that other people can't. But anyway, the question wasn't, am I going, for these people, the question wasn't, am I going to go to an Ivy League school? The question was, which Ivy League school am I going to go to? And I knew people, I think it was 4 people I knew went to Harvard. And, I knew people, 2 people that went to Stanford and UC Berkeley, Yale. I knew a guy that went to Princeton. And in hindsight, these kids were really smart. I remember taking AP Econ, and God, like every one of these kids was so driven and so smart. Without a doubt, this AP Econ class, my year of high school, was the hardest class I've ever been in my life. College, non-college, whatever you want to say. I mean, the majority of my years on this planet, I've been in some sort of an educational setting. You know, I think it's been what 20 something like 29 years of my life